Hello and welcome back to the Watch Correspondent. Today we're going to take a look at a watch from Baltany. This is the Baltany S4046, a tilted dial driver's watch inspired by vintage designs. And I gotta say, this thing is sweet. I really am a fan. It's really made beautifully. It has all the amenities that you want. The specs are great and not much to complain about. So I always like to do a little overview, and let's get to that. There is compact measurements, but of course it is a square case. 38 millimeter diameter is listed, but I'd say it wears more like a 40. Has a really nice leather band on there. It's stainless steel all throughout. Really, this thing is quite the looker. I'm a big fan. It even has that little hint of blue from that small seconds dial. Has a blued hand on it, or at least blue. And I really am a fan. In reality, there's two watch brands that dominate the Chinese scene, and they are Baltany and San Martin. And they sort of operate in different spaces. Baltany are making a lot of these dress watches and maybe military-inspired ones like Fliegers and chronographs, whereas San Martin make a lot of dive watches. Of course, Baltany have dive watches as well, but this is more their style. With that, I think the branding is quite good here. Just a clean logo on it, even branded on that leather strap and on the buckle. Baltany also provide a 2-year warranty with all their watches, which is quite rare for watches out of China. So there's not really much to complain about here. They're known for delivering great value, and they've done that once again. And that brings us nicely into the value segment here. There are actually two models of this available, one with a Seagull automatic movement and one with a Miyota 9 series automatic movement. The Miyota version comes in at $295 and with no small seconds hand, but this model comes in at $169, which I think is a great price. Of course, there are cheaper watches available, but for sapphire with an AR undercoating that is clear, and an automatic movement, and a really, really wonderful strap, and the looks that this has, and even the uniqueness, right? Baltany probably knows that a watch like this won't market quite as well as another clone of a Rolex dive watch, and yet they did it anyway. I haven't really seen this case shape or this dial layout done in Homage form yet, and they pulled it off quite well, and for a great price. On screen now are the measurements and specifications for the unit. There is a 38.1 millimeter diameter here, but it is a square watch, so I'd say it wears more like a 40. There's a lug-to-lug of 44, which is compact and means that it shouldn't overhang anybody's wrist. The small-wristed of us should be able to wear this just fine. You'll see it on my 7-inch wrist later, but I stand by that statement. Pretty thin today at 10.7 millimeters, should be able to fit under any cuff without too much of a problem. And that 316L stainless steel case is actually treated, so it is hardened more than your average 316L, which is great to see. There's a brown leather strap, and it is quite a high quality, genuine leather strap as well. Once again, I'll hit on that. And there's sapphire coating with clear anti-reflective coating underneath it. There's a Seagull ST1701 automatic movement, and there's only 50 meters of water resistance and 0 lume. Those two last details can be summed up by the fact that it is a dress watch, so water resistance and lume aren't really important. This comes in this textured white version as well as the Sunburst Salmon. I mentioned earlier that there is a Miyota powered version of this as well. That only comes in the white. Moving right along, let's look at the case now. The case here is a 316L stainless steel that has been hardened, so it actually has been raised from a 200 to a 500 rating on the Vickers hardness scale, which just translates to this shouldn't get scratched up with your keys or when you walk into a doorway, or if it's on your dresser and it gets knocked off, you should really be fine. The combination of a hardened steel and a sapphire crystal means that you really shouldn't have to baby this at all, although once again it has that 50 meters of water resistance, which is not great. It being a dress watch, it shouldn't matter though. The shape here is a bit unexpected and fun. It's square, but still pillow shaped. It's a little bit protruding on the edges, so it's not fully square, not fully a circle. I think it looks wonderful, especially with that crown up at the corner of the watch. That, of course, aligned with the 12. The entire watch here is polished, which, of course, being a dress watch, is a wonderful look and a classic choice. The case back is a solid steel. There is no window to the movement. And, of course, it is screwed in with 8 of these little screws in 2 of each corner. Moving past the case is one of the best dials I've seen, period, out of China. And, of course, much of it is a borrowed design from a Vacheron Constantin, but that's no bad thing. That is one of the most beautiful watches we've ever seen, and this is nearly identical. So it goes without saying that the dial here is one of the most beautiful that I've ever seen. It's really classic. It has those Arabic numerals for every indice and silver leaf hands. You can see at the 3 o'clock position, the numeral is replaced with a subdial. I always hate when you have those indices that are sort of cut off to make room, so you only see the right half of the 3 and this and that. You can see also that the running seconds on that small second hand is blue. Baltany claims that it is blued steel. Either way, it looks great. There is a minute track going around the outer edge of the dial, and the entire dial is textured, almost sparkling in certain lights. It really looks fantastic, and the salmon dial is available too. One thing to note is that that salmon dial, I'll show it here, has a sunburst effect on it, which also looks great, but notably different than this one. In the subdial, you can see there's also minute tracks and numerals marking 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. And all in all, it's a cohesive package, and the branding is done just perfectly. Not too much, understated and clean. I really like this dial, and there's hard to find fault with it. The only thing is that it doesn't have lume. Behind that beautiful dial is the Seagull ST1701 automatic movement. It beats at 21,600 beats per hour and has 20 joules inside. Has a 40-hour power reserve and really matches all the specs that you want. Although I will say the rotor is quite noisy. I will shake it here and hopefully you can hear it. Sorry if that was crude for the camera, but I just wanted to get a little feel for the fact that you can definitely hear the rotor on wrist and sort of feel it too. It's not the smoothest I've ever felt. I will say the push-pull crown operates just as you would expect it to, and it also hand winds. A pretty average movement, but I really wish I couldn't hear it quite as much as I do. Moving right along to the brown leather strap here. This is hands down the best strap I've seen on a Chinese watch. It's supple, and yet it's firm and feels high quality. It's stamped genuine leather, and it definitely is. You can tell that it's genuine, it smells like leather, and the buckle here is even signed with Baltany's branding. 2 loops here to catch the strap on its way in, and enough adjustment holes where it shouldn't be a problem for anybody. The stitching is done in a natural fiber color, and it complements the color of the strap well. For a leather band, this is about as good as it gets. Of course, you could spend hundreds of dollars on a vegetable tan this and a vegan leather that, but I think this is more than sufficient, and I was unexpectedly surprised. Here it is on my 7-inch wrist, and I think I speak for us all when I say it fits perfectly. One thing to note is that it has these slab sides on it. It isn't that thick, but the slab sides will accentuate it. And if you have small wrists, perhaps it might fit a little too large for you. I really think it's fine for 7-inch, and even down a little bit, 6.5 up, I think this will fit you great. And a large wrist should be fine as well. This is a dress watch, of course, so here's what it looks like under a cuff. It should fit just fine under there. You can see I have no problems with this shirt. Now, the idea behind a watch with this sort of dial layout is that while you are driving, imagine your hand is on the wheel, you can tilt it and see the time while your hands are on the wheel, so you can be racing and not have to take your hands off to check the time, or maybe your lap time. So it can clearly be worn in dress environments, but it does have that hardened 316L steel case, and it does have sapphire crystal, which means I think this is more wearable than maybe you'd think. I think it's pretty versatile. Of course, that water resistance really brings it down, and so does the lume, but in casual environments where you're perhaps out during the day, this works great, especially because it's a muted colorway. This works well with a t-shirt and jeans, just as well as it does in a suit, just as well as it does in a tuxedo, as long as none of those scenarios are near water or at night. Now on to the last category I like to look at, originality. This is the most dreaded category for many of the Chinese watch brands, as they borrow a lot of their design elements, and I think that will be the case for this watch as well. As much as I love the design and feel of this watch, here it is next to a Vacheron Constantin Historique American 1921. This isn't an out of production model or a vintage model you can't get anymore. This is a model that is currently in production, of course, at an unattainable price for nearly everyone, especially those of us watching this video. So what did Baltany change here? Of course, the branding is different, but beyond that, it's hard to find the exact things. Even the font looks relatively similar. I will say that the second hand is blued on this model and also has a circular counterbalance, whereas in the original it is a simple pencil. Additionally, both the minute and hour hand for this watch are simple leafs, whereas the Vacheron has an additional circular element on the end. It is worth noting that while yes, the design elements of this watch are almost entirely borrowed, the original 1921 from Vacheron is not only an extremely rare watch, but also not really in the public eye. Homage watches tend to be of the most popular watches, so you see a lot of Rolex Submariners and Omega Seamasters and Aquaterras, but I haven't seen even one of these before. There is one model from Vostok that isn't quite an homage, but definitely has the same vibe. But beyond that, this is the only one of its kind, so you have to give them credit where credit is due. So here's the watch score. Totaling up to 55, this is the highest rated dress watch that we've seen on the channel yet. Almost all of the points lost for this watch are on things like lume or the water resistance rating, where that doesn't really matter for its intended scenario of being worn in dress environments. All in all, I think the Baltany has absolutely killed it with the S4046, and this is a gem of a watch. It's unique and pretty much the only way to get a driver's style watch on your wrist without spending everything in your bank account to get one from Vacheron. And you're not really losing out on much. This watch is fantastic, has an automatic movement and all the amenities like sapphire and even hardness treated coating on the 316L. It's hard to recommend enough, and if you were interested in this sort of model, then there's no reason not to go for it. This has been the Watch Correspondent. Please like and subscribe, it means a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.